Jennifer and Kristina Beard had just lost their adopted father, who had only recently been murdered when something strange happened. The day they went with their mother to purchase a coffin, she suggested that the twins choose pink coffins for themselves, too. A statement that left them puzzled, but they brushed it aside since their mom had not too long ago been discharged from a psychiatric hospital. But when a few weeks later she stabbed herself on her thighs after suggesting they all killed themselves, they knew that perhaps she hadn't fully recovered from a struggle with her mental health and had to return to the psychiatric hospital. They would later learn that their adopted father hadn't been killed by a random stranger and that, in fact, their manipulative mother was the mastermind of the murder, having convinced her lesbian lover to kill her husband. Now they might just be the next on her list if they didn't get away fast. Driven by the promise of controlling her husband's million-dollar estate in the event of his death, their mentally unstable mother turned an already abominable love triangle into a tragedy and would have gotten away with it if not for the testimony of the very children she had birthed. This is the twisted case of Jennifer and Kristina Beard, the identical twins who narrowly escaped death at the hands of their killer mom. The twin sisters, Jennifer and Kristina, were born in 1982 into a dysfunctional family, and their experiences growing up were far from a normal childhood. Their mother, Celeste Johnson, who had them when she was just 17, grew up in unstable circumstances, not knowing who her father was and only ever meeting her birth mother once, who sadly told her, "I am not your mother, I was just your incubator." Celeste Johnson was adopted by Edwin Johnson, a single man, but this wasn't any good for her as he abused her to the point that she attempted suicide in her early teenage years. She would later get pregnant by a man called Craig Bratcher, who became her first husband and father of the twins. Craig and Celeste had an abusive marriage filled with disagreements, and when they couldn't bear it no longer, they divorced each other, but not without a long and frustrating legal battle over the custody of the kids. The case ended with the identical twins being separated. Jennifer remained with Craig, her biological father, in Washington, while Kristina was taken by her mom, who went on to be remarried 3 times. Even though the twins were just kids, they knew something was not right with their mother due to how erratic she behaved towards them sometimes. But they never knew how truly damaged Celeste was or what she was capable of doing until it was too late. When Kristina and Jennifer were 13 years old, their mom met Stephen Beard while she worked as a waitress at a country club in Texas, and they got into a brief intimate relationship that would end with the two getting married. Beard, who was more than twice her age, was a retired TV broadcasting executive and self-made millionaire whose wife had previously died of cancer. Celeste moving in with him meant she was putting hundreds of miles between Kristina and Jennifer, her twin daughters, as Beard lived in Austin, Texas, and Craig, whom Jennifer stayed with, lived in Washington. The identical twins weren't able to see each other frequently, and this was difficult for them as they had grown to be best friends, but they had no choice but to accept their fate. However, life smiled on them in 1996 after 3 years of living apart when they made plans to reunite at their grandparents' house in California. The twins beamed with excitement at the sight of each other. They hadn't been in the same space for so long, and they spent most of that day laughing and catching up. But unknown to them, something sinister that would steal their newfound joy was brewing. While at their grandparents' house, Jennifer thought to phone their biological father Craig and inform him that they had arrived safely. They dialed his line, but it rang with no answer. They called a second time, but Craig did not pick up, and this distressed them. They kept trying for 2 days with no response, but they received the disheartening news about their father's unusual death. Craig Bratcher was found lifeless in his apartment after he took his own life, leaving a note behind in which he admitted to having been silently struggling with mental health issues for many years, unknown to anyone. This sad news broke Jennifer and Kristina, and the fun they looked forward to having together was replaced with gloom as they wondered why their father would do something as grave as suicide. They were in great shock. As Craig was no more, Jennifer had to join her twin sister Kristina and their mom Celeste at Stephen Beard's house in Austin, Texas. She was still shaken by her father's passing as she struggled to adjust to her new home, but she looked on the bright side and tried to enjoy her twin sister's company. To Jennifer's surprise, Mr. Beard was very welcoming towards her and treated her with love. Stephen Beard assumed the role of stepdad for the twins with much ease and gave them all the fatherly attention they lacked for most of their lives, so it wasn't strange when he began the process of officially adopting them. Life seemed stable for the sisters at that moment. They were happily living under the same roof for the first time in a long time. They had a responsible man as their dad, and they were about to start their senior year of high school. However, not everyone around the house was in a stable state, and it wasn't long before Celeste couldn't contain her inner demons anymore. In 1999, Celeste had a psychotic breakdown and threatened Kristina with a gun before pointing the same at her head, but she was promptly stopped before any harm was done. Following her violent behavior, Mr. Beard checked Celeste into St. David's Psychiatric Mental Hospital in Austin, Texas. He hoped she would get better after spending some time there, but unknown to him, the worst was yet to come. While she stayed at the psychiatric facility, Celeste became friends with a fellow patient, Tracy Tarleton, and the two began spending a lot of time together. Celeste quickly showed her attraction for Tracy and, after a while, pushed for an intimate relationship, which she gladly accepted. Unknown to Tracy, Celeste saw her as nothing but a means to actualize a sick plan that she had been thinking about for some time. After several months, Celeste returned to her husband and 2 kids after being discharged from the psychiatric hospital, but this did not stop her from seeing her newly found lesbian lover, who had been discharged some time before her. Celeste was cunning in hiding her affair with Tracy from her husband. She frequently brought her around the house for dinner, birthday parties, and other functions as a family friend, and although Stephen Beard didn't suspect anything, the twins knew something was unusual about their mother's friendship with this woman, but they said nothing. Kristina and Jennifer became wary of their mom, whom they thought was acting strange. They noticed Celeste had been spending money exuberantly, buying expensive paintings, clothing, and other items she didn't need. They also saw her sneak out of the house late at night a few times, but stayed silent about all of it. It was during this period that Celeste became fed up with her marriage to Stephen Beard and masterminded a violent crime that shook her family to its roots. In October 1999, a tragedy struck the Beards that would change Kristina and Jennifer's lives forever. Jennifer, 17 years of age, had gone for a sleepover at her boyfriend's house while Kristina was at home fast asleep when their mother came running through her room door in panic. She turned on the light and said, "Someone is at the front door." Kristina, not fully aware of what was going on, got up from her bed and made her way to the front door, but she was surprised by the sight of a flashing white light coming from outside their house. Kristina, in shock, raced away from the door to grab a phone and call 911. From where she dialed the emergency number, she could hear a loud banging on the door and what seemed like the voices of many people outside. With fear in her voice, she began reporting everything that was happening on the 911 when the operative informed her that the people banging at her door were in fact police officers responding to a distress call they had received from someone in that very house.
What is going on there?
I'm in bed. I'm in awful pain.
Okay, are you there by yourself?
My wife is somewhere in the house. I can't find her.
Kristina couldn't make any sense of this but rushed to the front door to let the police in. The police asked Kristina where her dad was, and she replied that he had been sleeping in his room upstairs, after which they asked to be directed there. She hurriedly led the police to her stepfather's room, and her mother followed closely behind, but they were not by any means ready for what they found there. To their horror, Stephen Beard was lying on the floor covered in a pool of his blood and fighting for his life. He had been shot in the abdomen and was losing blood quickly. Paramedics who had been on standby swarmed in and tried to stabilize him, and when this didn't seem to work, they transported him by air to a nearby hospital. Kristina watched everything unfold in immense shock. She was puzzled about who could have broken into their house and shot her stepfather, wondering if this was a random burglary attempt, but that didn't seem likely. The police, on the other hand, swung into investigative action, and soon a shocking discovery was made. A shotgun shell was found on the ground near where Mr. Beard was shot, a shred of evidence that became crucial in finding the culprit. The house was blocked off as a crime scene, and the police carefully searched for clues to unravel the mystery of what had happened that day. They found that a side door that wasn't frequently used had been left unlocked, and this led them to theorize that the killer may have entered the house through it, shot Mr. Beard, and escaped before anyone noticed. They proceeded to take DNA swabs from all the family members who could have been present at the time this crime was committed. This involved Celeste and her 2 daughters, Kristina and Jennifer, who had been called by her sister to come home at once. As the twins made their way to comply with the police's request, their mother said something to them that left them both terrified. "If the police ask you who might have done it, don't mention Tracy's name," Celeste whispered to the girls. On hearing this, the twins became confused as many thoughts went through their minds. Why would their mother make such a request at such a time? Did Tracy Tarleton know something about the shooting? And was their mother trying to protect her? Kristina and Jennifer decided to keep this disturbing conversation to themselves until they reached the hospital, where their father was receiving emergency treatment for the bullet wounds. At the hospital, Kristina was pulled aside and questioned by some detectives, and after a few minutes, they asked her who she thought shot her stepfather. Her mother's strange request immediately rang through her mind, but she instead did the opposite of it. "My mom doesn't want me to mention this, but I'm not supposed to say Tracy Tarleton," Kristina said to the detectives. This was enough to make the detectives look into Tracy as a prime suspect in the case, and immediately a warrant was obtained to search her house as part of the investigation. The police showed up at Tracy's front door, and when she opened up, they questioned her. Tracy Tarleton was asked if she owned a shotgun or was in possession of one, and when she affirmed that she did, the police immediately asked to be taken to where it was kept. She appeared lost in thought for a while before she obliged the police's request and led them to where she had kept a Franchi 20-gauge shotgun that had her name inscribed on it. The police received the weapon from Tracy and conducted forensic tests on it. However, it would take several days of patient waiting for the results to come back, and they weren't pleasant. The tests revealed that the shotgun was the same one from which the bullet that injured the twin stepfather, Stephen Beard, on the 8th of October 1999 was fired. This discovery led to the arrest of Tracy Tarleton, and she was charged with attempted murder 5 days after Mr. Beard was shot in his room. The twins finally got some closure knowing that the person who tried to kill their father was now locked up in jail. Meanwhile, Stephen Beard remained at the hospital bedridden for months. It was hard for them to see him this way, but they stuck by his side, visiting him as often as they could. They had lost one dad to suicide and were in no way ready to lose another to murder. However, the police were not satisfied with the resolution of this case. Tracy may have been a close friend of the family, but they could not get to the bottom of what might have motivated her to shoot Mr. Beard if she had acted alone. Her blatant refusal to talk to them made matters worse. She stayed silent through all the police's questioning, and this agitated them even more. They were convinced Tracy was protecting someone who was on the outside, walking free, and soon they would find out. While the police dug deeper into the investigation, Stephen Beard tragically passed away after he was released from the hospital, but succumbed to a blood clot on the 22nd of January in 2000. The police now had a murder case on their hands. This news broke Jennifer and Kristina, as they had just lost the second man that they could call father. "We loved Steve. He never wanted us to worry about anything. He just wanted us to be loved and enjoy our lives. Coming from Washington State and losing my father, he filled that role for me. That I'll never forget," Jennifer said. While arrangements for his funeral began, the twins tried to mourn Stephen Beard, coping with the pain of living without him, but this was too much for them to bear, so they turned to Celeste, their mother, for comfort. However, what happened next was something the sisters did not see coming. Celeste took the girls to purchase a casket for the late stepfather, and while they were shopping for options, she suggested that they pick out pink ones for themselves as well. This confused the twins as much as it scared them. They could not wrap their heads around why their mother would buy caskets for them when they were just 18. Were they about to die? They pondered. It was bizarre even for her. But this was just the beginning, and things got more and more strange with Celeste. While the sisters cried over their father's death, they noticed their mother seemed to be strangely overjoyed, laughing frequently and getting loud around the house. They knew she could not have moved on so fast, and on the 16th of February 2000, things reached a breaking point. The twins were going about their day around the house when their mother popped out of nowhere and said, "Hey, why don't we all kill ourselves?" As if this statement wasn't shocking enough, she suddenly pulled out a knife and stabbed herself in the leg as her kids watched in horror. The twins were frozen in shock, but one of them managed to call 911 and request immediate medical attention for their mom, whose blood was gushing all over the floor. In a matter of minutes, paramedics responding to their call stormed through the house and attended to their mother. They tried their best to stop Celeste's leg from bleeding out before driving her off in an ambulance to a nearby hospital where she was kept for a few days. Kristina and Jennifer were puzzled by what they had just witnessed. Lately, everything around them seemed chaotic, but their mother's recent psychotic breakdown was not all that chaos had in store for the twins. While Celeste was held in the hospital, the sisters would continually receive phone calls from her, where she would yell at them and say all manner of disturbing things. These phone calls became more and more frequent, with the next being more unhinged than the last. Celeste would go from speaking normally to screaming and then back to speaking normally. This terrified the sisters, but they endured it until an idea popped into Kristina's head. This idea became the most important piece of evidence in finally uncovering who was really behind Stephen Beard's tragic murder. Kristina began recording her disturbing phone call conversations with her mother to play them back to her when she got out of the hospital, but on one of those calls, Celeste exposed a secret that had Kristina on her heels to the police. "I hired someone to kill Tracy," Celeste said this while on the phone with Kristina, who had been absent-mindedly recording the conversation, but the statement caused chills to run down her spine, and she ended the call. Kristina hurriedly informed her sister of what their mom just spilled, and the two were terrified as they began to connect the dots. The pink coffins, the bizarre violent episodes, the strange calls and attempts to protect Tracy Tarleton from the police, and now a confession to wanting her dead, are all connected to the suspicious murder of Stephen Beard. They didn't want to believe it, but for the first time they could see that Celeste Johnson, their mother, was at the center of all this mystery. She was the mastermind behind their recent chaos. In Jennifer's words, "Hearing that sealed it for me, like any sort of doubt I ever had that Celeste was involved with our father's murder," she said. Things got a lot worse as the day Celeste was scheduled to be discharged from the hospital drew closer. The sisters knew that they were in grave danger, and their only chance of survival was to run away, hiding from their mother. They feared they might be next on her murder list, and she would be coming after them. Jennifer and Kristina proceeded to clear out their bank accounts so they wouldn't leave any traces for Celeste while on the run. They stayed in various hotels and motels, paying for all the supplies they needed with cash. This wasn't the life they imagined to have by the time they were 18, but they had to survive somehow. Celeste tried to find her kids, but her best efforts proved futile because they were very careful. She called every relative and family friend asking about their whereabouts, but no one had seen them. She soon gave up her search and, after 6 months, remarried yet again. But this was Celeste's undoing. A local newspaper carried the news of her remarriage, and somehow it made its way to Tracy Tarleton, who had been behind bars. It finally dawned on Tracy that her relationship with Celeste was nothing but a sham, and the woman who claimed to love her had been manipulating her all along. Tracy was vexed by this discovery and decided to break her silence with the police. She revealed to the police that Celeste had told her Stephen Beard was an emotionally and physically abusive husband, maltreating her to the point of contemplating suicide and also persuading her to shoot him. Celeste also told Tracy that the only way they could be together freely was if she got rid of her husband, according to Tracy's statement. This revelation added a new layer to the murder case, which was due for a court hearing in March 2002 but had to be postponed. When the police questioned Celeste Johnson about Tracy's allegations, she vehemently denied them, claiming she did not know such a thing. It seemed like they had hit another standstill in the case as they could not prove Tracy's new testimony, but as the news of it reached Kristina and Jennifer, the twins knew they had the missing piece in the puzzle. The sisters, armed with the taped conversations from their mother's disturbing calls, went to the police to obtain a family violence protection order, which was granted immediately. The tapes, a new crucial piece of evidence in addition to Tracy Tarleton's confession, were enough for the police to have Celeste Johnson under arrest as a prime suspect in her husband's capital murder case. The police worked closely with Kristina, Jennifer, and Tracy Tarleton to piece together all the parts of the crime that they had initially missed, and in February 2003, after a time that seemed like forever, the trial began. The twins had to take the stand in front of their mother, not to defend her, but to give a testimony they hoped would put her behind bars forever. This was no small feat for the girls, now 21 years of age, but they knew Stephen Beard deserved justice. Jennifer revealed that her mother confessed over the phone to marrying the former TV host and self-made millionaire not for love, but solely for his money and the promise of it being hers when he passed away. "Did the defendant ever talk to you about her feelings about Mr. Beard?" a lawyer asked her. "Yeah, she said she married Steve for money," she responded. As the trial unfolded, it was revealed that Celeste frequently put sleeping pills in Stephen Beard's food before sneaking out to meet with her lesbian lover, Tracy, whom she manipulated into pulling the trigger and taking the fall for it. She knew Tracy was an easy target, being that the two met in a psychiatric hospital, and her plan worked out perfectly. Also revealed was Celeste's extravagant spending, which ran into almost $600,000 over the previous 3 years, a clear sign that she was motivated by Stephen Beard's money. The trial went on for weeks until the 19th of March in 2003, when the 12-man jury was done deliberating their judgment. Celeste was found guilty of the murder of her husband, Stephen Beard, and was sentenced to 2 consecutive 40-year prison terms. This meant she wouldn't have the possibility of parole until 2042, when she would be 79 years of age. However, this judgment came with mixed feelings for Kristina and Jennifer, who were about to witness their mother taken away to prison in handcuffs. They had lost so much in the past few years, and although justice was finally served, they couldn't feel any better about it. After the trial, Tracy, who was now facing a life sentence, asked to see the sisters, and when they agreed to meet her, she pleaded for their forgiveness. She thought her deed was against an evil man who abused her lover, not knowing she was being manipulated all along. Kristina and Jennifer forgave her, seeing Tracy as just another victim in their mother's sick plans. Dealing with such a stressful childhood could ruin anyone, but after years of therapy, the sisters went on to live normal lives and even started families of their own years later. Their brave story captured the imagination of people around the world, and the Stephen Beard case became a hot topic in true crime, with documentaries on many news and media channels like American Justice, Snapped, Deadly Women, Vengeance Killer Millionaires, and the most popular, ABC's coverage on the case. That brings us to the end of today's video. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more. See you in our next video.